the distance a button creates. Automation rarely removes labor, it removes the feeling of consequence. The cleaner the interface, the easier it is to forget what it touches. Interfaces create capture by turning responsibility into a proxy. The system rewards smooth inputs and ignores downstream costs. An interface is the layer that translates an action into a permitted set of options, while hiding the rest of the system. Start with the mechanism. Abstraction compresses reality. An interface takes a complex world, time, materials, people, risk, and reduces it to a few fields, toggles, thresholds, and defaults. That reduction is not neutral. It is a constraint. The explicit constraint is that only what fits the model can be chosen, recorded, and later audited. Anything outside the permitted options becomes invisible, and invisibility is how externalities survive. Automation then adds a second move. It accelerates decisions while weakening feedback. When action is cheap and reversible in appearance, attention shifts away from consequences. The incentive becomes throughput. More tasks processed, more tickets closed, more units moved, more alerts cleared. The feedback loop is simple and powerful. Faster completion produces better scores grant trust and more access enables even faster completion. The system trains behavior by rewarding the interface's definition of done, not realities. Every layer also introduces a trade-off. The trade-off is legibility versus fidelity. The more legible the dashboard, the less faithful it is to the messy causal chain beneath it. Legibility is valuable. Without it, coordination collapses. But fidelity is where responsibility lives, because fidelity preserves the uncomfortable link between choice and cost. Notice how responsibility relocates. In a direct action, the actor feels friction, effort, time, confrontation with limits. In an automated action, friction is shifted upward into design and policy, and downward into maintenance and cleanup. The user experiences convenience. The system experiences strain elsewhere. This is not a moral drama. It is a structural one. When the interface hides the downstream work becomes someone else's problem by default. Metric gaming is where the distance becomes visible. Suppose a team is scored on average handle time for requests. The interface makes it easy to close items quickly and hard to record nuance. A rational response emerges. Close requests at the first plausible checkpoint, reopen them later if they bounce back, or route complicated cases to a category that doesn't count. Handle time improves, outcomes degrade. That is proxy drift. The metric becomes the target and the original purpose. Resolution, care, safety turns into an optional narrative. Automation amplifies this because it scales the proxy. Once the interface defines success, scripts and rules can chase that definition at high speed. The system then produces a calm, continuous stream of green indicators while accumulating hidden backlog, brittle edge cases, and deferred harms. The consequence does not disappear. It is displaced into longer horizons and less visible corners. So the distance between action and consequence is not an accident. It is purchased with design choices, defaults, thresholds, categories, permissions, and what the system refuses to represent. And because those choices are optimized for efficiency, the incentives naturally privilege what is countable over what is costly, and what is immediate over what is enduring. When consequence is abstracted, outcomes start to feel natural, as if the system simply is the way it is. But systems are made of constraints, and constraints encode values. If an interface treats people as tickets, time as a timer, and quality as a checkbox, it does not merely describe reality, it trains attention to see reality that way. Responsibility then becomes ambiguous. The operator can say, "I followed the workflow." The designer can say, "I only provided tools." The manager can say, "I only enforced the metric." Each statement is partly true, and the gap between them is where harm and meaning leak out. What disappears first is not ethics, it is authorship. When no one feels like the author, no one feels like the steward. Meaning depends on contact with consequence. Not constant guilt, not performative blame, contact. Without it, the work becomes a game against the interface, and identity becomes a report. The system does not need to be malicious to erode meaning. It only needs incentives that reward speed while treating downstream cost as someone else's line item. A disciplined reflection is available here. Name one metric you serve, explicitly or quietly, and notice what it makes easy to ignore. Name one value that metric might erase when it becomes the proxy for good, and consider where the consequence goes when the interface declares the task complete. There is no purity in this, only clarity. Interfaces will always simplify. Automation will always compress. The question is whether the simplification keeps responsibility in view or exports it into the shadows as an externality. Incentives do not care about your story, but restraint begins when you notice what the interface asks you to forget.